We spend so much of our lives trying to create ourselves. Who should I be? What should I become? What identity should I have? But what if our lives didn't change when we finally become this new person? What if our lives change when we remember who we were before fear covered up our truth? In Taoism, there's this idea of de, which is our inherent, authentic expression of our true nature. You can think of it like the dandelion is not living its life trying to be a rose. It just unfolds over time to become more fully itself. This full moon in Sagittarius feels less like a call to expansion in a completely new direction and more of a call for expression of what's already there. What truth already exists in you beneath the surface? And what can you do to finally let it rise? Now, this full moon in Sagittarius is happening on May 31st, and it's happening at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. So if you have anything around 7 to 11 degrees of Sagittarius, Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, this is going to be hitting that placement directly. But for all of us, it's going to be affecting a certain part of our chart. Now, you might want to go back and think about back in December when we had this new moon in Sagittarius, what was happening in your life then? If I have a video about that, and it was called a spiritual reality check. So if you're interested in seeing what I had to say about the new moon, definitely go check that out. But there was something that was calling us to stop just drifting and start actually moving towards our dreams. This full moon is a culmination of that, right? Full moons are culminations. They are reflections of the unconscious being illuminated to us. Sometimes that comes through messages, sometimes that comes through emotions. With this full moon in Sagittarius, it's coming through a sense of truth, purpose, meaning. And as we will see, this is really a call to awakening what is already there. You know, Sagittarius has a tendency sometimes to seek a lot out there, right? And I have my moon in Sagittarius, I have Jupiter in my first house, so I very much relate to this. But what I think this full moon is illuminating to a lot of us is that the real journey lies within. Not from a space of going in and fixing all the things that are wrong, and not even from the space of healing what is there, but from a space of genuine curiosity. Now, I want to start this video by going through some of the things that I'm looking at because there are a lot of threads with this with this full moon. And actually, I had already made a video about this, and at the end of the video, I was feeling really exhausted, and I was like, "What's going on? Why am I so tired?" And when I went to edit the video, I was thinking, I was like, "Man, I think I'm exhausted because I really just went through every thread, and it was exhausting." And it really embodied what this full moon is asking of us, which is a certain level of specificity. Because this full moon in Sagittarius is happening in gate 9, and gate 9 is a gate of focus. And the ruler of this full moon is Jupiter in gate 62, the gate of details. So there's something about getting more specific about our path, about our expression that's coming through. And that clearly was a lesson for me in making this video as well. I did a very Gemini thing, right? And we've got the sun in Gemini. So I first want to start by just telling you guys what threads I'm looking at, and then we'll go deeper into how they all converge and my overall synthesis of what is coming up during this full moon. Because I look at a lot of things when it comes to these videos. I look at astrology, human design, gene keys, the I-Ching, tarot, Sabian symbol, right? So there's a lot of threads that we could go down. And I really just want to allow myself to transmit what is coming through in this moment, honestly. So let's take a look at the charts and I'll tell you what is really standing out for me in this full moon. Okay, so first we've got this full moon here. And this full moon, as you'll see, is conjunct Antares, which is one of the fixed royal Persian stars. And the sun is conjunct Aldebaran, which is another one of the fixed royal Persian stars. So that already is giving a lot of power to this full moon. The ruler is Jupiter, and it's in Cancer, and it is squaring Chiron. Now, this was actually happening as well with the new moon in Sagittarius. So interesting that they're both coming up here. Jupiter in Cancer is wanting us to grow through emotional expansion of our truth. And Chiron and Aries squaring this says this is going to require us to let go of some of the protective mechanisms that we've created around our sense of self. We have to allow ourselves to feel like a new person in order to expand enough to hold all of the emotional truths that we've been gathering over the last year with Jupiter and Cancer. And Jupiter is going to be moving into Leo soon, right? So there's something that is really culminating with what this has meant for you. And it's applying some pressure there as well. You'll also notice that Uranus is squaring the nodes. And in the days before this full moon, the sun will also be squaring the nodes. So this really brings us to this point of this sort of threshold that is asking us to expand beyond what we might have told ourselves is acceptable, right? And this is just compounded by the fact that Mercury, Venus, and the moon are all out of bounds, which means essentially they are out of the realm of convention. They are moving in very exaggerated ways. And I myself actually have a moon in Sagittarius that is out of bounds. So I understand there's a wild energy, right? Sagittarius wants to be free. It wants to be free to move towards what it finds meaningful. And this energy really, I always think about astrology in oppositions, right? Talk about this. I've always talked about it like this because it's really fascinating to me. When we think of the wholeness of the psyche being represented by the astrology chart, we see that integrating and reconciling opposites becomes our path to individuation. And this is through Jungian psychology as well. So I use astrology and human design and tarot and all these amazing archetypes to help us on the individuation path, right? Which is finding the unconscious patterns that keep us in our own prisons, regardless of what's happening out there. That's what I really feel like these archetypes can help us do in our lives. And that's how I use them. So when we're thinking about it from this perspective of moon out of bounds, opposing the sun in Gemini, it can bring this quality of, or this opposition of being really present to the moment, right? Because Gemini is about perception of everything that is. That's why Geminis are flighty and we can go down every thread, right? Because so much information is coming all the time, not just through the mind generating thoughts, but through our perception of where we are, right? I'm like, oh, a tree, this means this. And oh, this, it's like all of this energy that comes through us all the time. And Sagittarius says, but what is this in support of? What are you orienting around? What truths are you orienting around in your life? And this is why I often tell Geminis is we have to really learn how to detach from the mind, because otherwise we end up just going down every single which path. And then at some point in our lives, we're like, what did I do? What am I doing? And so we want to kind of bring that balance. And I think this full moon is really asking you to get more specific about what it is that you want to orient around in terms of truth in your life. And once again, I don't think this knowledge is out there. I really don't. The last thing I want to say about the astrology that's coming through for me, beyond this Pluto Mars energy, which at the time of this video coming out, Mars and Pluto are squaring each other. I have a whole Substack about this, but everybody just take a deep breath. Everybody just take a deep breath. Things are intense right now. And this full moon is asking you to see why that may be the exact thing that you need. This intensity, this blockage, this whatever you're going through right now may be the exact thing that you need to go on your path, to walk toward freedom. Sagittarius has a lot to do with alchemy, as we'll see in the tarot when we discuss the decan. The decan is ruled by Eight of Wands, which is all about fast speed, fast travel, messages coming in, things accelerating. And I definitely think we're all feeling this as well. It can also mean travel. And it's so funny, the day of this full moon that's happening on my sun, or it's happening opposite my sun. I'm going across country for a 2-week silent meditation retreat. So it's definitely, definitely doing some traveling and things like that, but it could just be like fast messages incoming, right? Because we've got a lot of mercurial influence right now. In the major arcana, the Temperance card is ruled by Sagittarius. And temperance is about alchemy. Often people think about it's about balance, but that's really more the Justice card, right? There is a sense of moderation, yes, but that moderation is not about finding a balance as it is about integrating and reconciling opposites. So perfect card for this type of energy. There is something that is asking us to really look at these oppositions inside of us during this full moon. Now, let's go into the human design, shall we? Because this is also where it gets interesting. So this is happening in gate 9, as I mentioned, which means the conscious earth is also in gate 9. Funny story about this. Is one of my favorite stories. My conscious earth is also in gate 9. And about a year before I knew about human design at all, I saw the hexagram 9, which human design gates, gene keys, are all built off the hexagram from the I-Ching. And when I saw it, I was like, and I read about it and I learned about it, I was like, I love this. And I got it tattooed right here. And then a year later, I found out about human design and I found out what grounds my identity in this world is hexagram 9. And that's where the full moon is. The gate of focus. Right? This is about allowing the small things in our lives to become the big things. So that's what we got there. We also have the 1762 highlighted for, I think, until June 12th. And this is the channel of acceptance, the channel of conceptualization, which is about essentially bringing really broad ideas and making sense of them. This can also make us very opinionated, though. So that could be a shadow you're seeing right now, like people really being opinionated or saying things that might trigger a lot of people, right? Because we also have gate 39, or I'm sorry, channel 3955, which is the channel of emoting or provocation. It's about emotional provocation. So we've got two energies, one that is emotionally provoking others, and we've got another one that might be mentally or verbally triggering others. So we've got this kind of dichotomy here. It could be a very triggering time, and full moons, as we know, can also be just a big emotional time for most people. So we've got those, and I want you to notice that we've got 4 gates on the throat center, and the throat center is defined, which means that the throat center is about expression, about manifestation. And as I mentioned in my May 2026 video, this month is really about that. Started with a full moon in Scorpio, excavation, new moon in Taurus, building foundations, building stabilization for something to grow, and then full moon in Sagittarius, which is the culmination of expression. And now we're seeing that. And yeah, definitely check out that video again and see what you resonate with before we move into June and as we're moving up to this culmination. There's something about details here, and a lot of 9 energy, right? It's 9 degrees Sagittarius happening in gate 9. 9 is about endings, release, culminations. This really feels like a culmination of expression and also a release of some of the things, some of the fears that have kept you from expressing your authentic self. So now that we kind of see the atmosphere here and what's going on and what I'm looking at here, that there's some sort of really important realization that's coming to mind here about ways that you have kept your voice small in order to belong, right? This Pluto Mars square, it's happening with Pluto in Aquarius, how we've outsourced our power to systems and ideologies to tell us how we can behave, what we can or cannot say. So let's get a little bit deeper into just talking about some of these energies and how I think they're going to be coming across, especially as it pertains to expressing our truth and going inward to find that truth rather than necessarily seeking it outward. Sagittarius is often associated with travel, and so is Mercury. Sagittarius is long distance, Mercury is short distance or familiar. Sagittarius is about the unfamiliar. And these two archetypes can learn so much from one another because, as I said, Sagittarius orients around truth, around meaning. There's something about like an addiction to movement with Sagittarius and Gemini energy. You might notice there is more anxiety. You might notice there's like a restlessness coming up in your body. And this is because both of these are mutable signs that like to move in different spaces. That's why I do these silent retreats, because even though the Sagittarian journey outward is very important, the journey inward is truly the most profound. In the I-Ching, the hexagram 9, the taming power of the small, is really about submission. It's about surrendering to the obstacles. It even says here in the I-Ching, the time has not yet come for sweeping measures. To carry out our purpose, we need firm determination within and gentleness and adaptability in external relations. In times when he can produce no great effect in the outer world, can do nothing except refine the expression of his nature in small ways. This is not about not doing anything, right? That's the channel or the gate that connects to gate 9, which is 52, the gate of stillness. Gate 9 means focus. And in the shadow of the gene key, this is actually inertia, and the gift is determination. And Richard Rudd talks about in there about how when we move into the gift of determination, it gets easier and easier to walk our path of devotion because we're leading from the heart. Antares, the star that is conjunct this full moon, is actually the heart of the Scorpion in the constellation of Scorpio. So there's something about allowing ourselves to move with this raw creative energy, raw emotional truth, without forgetting about Aldebaran, which is Archangel Michael. What can often happen with Aldebaran is integrity is huge. That's the number one word I associate with Aldebaran. I have my son on Aldebaran. It was almost like instant karma in my life. And I can't, it's like always just knowing I have to be the bigger person. Antares does not often, think that it needs to be a bigger person because it's Scorpio energy, right? This is root chakra stuff. This is survival, primal energy. And we're being asked to reconcile these two. How do we move in the world with integrity? What will I say? How can I say this in a way that lands or isn't harmful, but also isn't a repression of my truth, of my expression, of my inherent nature? And once again, this is going to feel really loud because that moon is out of bounds. Listen, baby, if anybody knows, it is your girl. I've always been told my expression is too much or it's too this. And I don't always, I genuinely don't think that it's because people are judging me all the time. I do think sometimes that's a thing, but I do think a lot of times it is just jarring for people to see somebody who emotes out of the conventional ways, right? I'm from Iran, and I went to Iran several years ago, and I was at a doctor's office, and he said something, and I laughed, and I have a really loud laugh. My friends used to call it like the witch cackle. I remember I laughed, and he looked at me like this. And I was like, oh no, did I do something wrong? And he looked over to my aunt and he said in Farsi, he said, she's so free. Oh. And there's so many things that I take from that encounter, but one of them is that his first look at me felt judgmental to me, but I think he just couldn't really understand, So when he made that comment, I was like, oh. And so how often are we moving through the world judging other people's judgment of us and getting it totally wrong, and then making it become something that we believe about ourselves? There is a website called Cafe au Sol that talks a lot about the I Ching, because the I Ching is kind of difficult to understand. So she kind of breaks it down really well. And I just want to talk about one of the things that she says in here, or a couple of the things that she says about hexagram 9. She says, there is no real blockage that can withstand submission. The universe is full of magical things patiently waiting for our wits to grow sharper. As we have this Jupiter Cancer conjunction, I think this is going to be really important for us to see how the universe has been trying to give us things all along that we just haven't been able to see. Taming power of the small is really about obstacles and being like water that moves around the obstacles. And this is very Sagittarius energy. Noticing that all of the things that you believe are standing in your way may actually be the path to freedom. And I wonder what would change in your life if you started seeing them as that. Recently, I had this situation where I was really projecting on this woman. And I'm going to talk about projections more in a different video because there's something I really need to say about it because I don't hear people talking about it enough. Within about 20 minutes, I was like, oh, how is this person trying to free me from myself? How is this person trying to free me from myself? What are they showing me about me? What are they showing me about my self-imposed restrictions? Obstacles exist, absolutely. They do. But our relationship to those obstacles changes everything. Let's see if the tarot wants to bring up anything that I haven't discussed yet. As I said, there's so much richness in this full moon. The power. I mean, I could have spent this entire time just talking about Antares and Aldebaran. Page of Cups. Page of Cups. There is a new emotional beginning here, but it is coming from the space of youthfulness, returning to a sense of innocence in some way, right? The Page of Cups, it's not the King of Cups. He's not sure about his emotions yet, but he's really allowing himself to express before he's sure and finding if he's sure or not through the expression. You don't know what feels true until you start allowing yourself to be seen saying it. Oh yeah, this is a huge thing. Creative rewilding is really, we go over a lot of things, but really at the essence is building more safety and capacity in the nervous system to be seen while expressing. So if you're wondering, I know that it's a projection, I know that other people's thoughts are about them and what they see in me is really in themselves, all these things, really brilliant, very self-aware, but you're still repressing who you are, or you feel strangely disconnected to your life, it's because there is a part of you that does not feel safe in expressing. So maybe the question isn't even what truth am I ready to express, but what does my body believe will happen if I express it? Yeah. Our bodies hold somatic memories. They remember all of the times where you said something and you got a weird look. You said something and you were told to shut up. You said something and they said, that sucks. Whatever you created sucks. Your body remembers that. And so you can't let everything stay in the mind. It cannot remain conceptual for long. At some point, it's got to come down here. And you've got to learn to build capacity and safety. And that's what I teach. Yeah, there is a real sense of success here. Success is available to you. Now, I want to talk about this though, because success is often deemed to be financial or status oriented. And for a Sagittarius energy moon, this is going to be very personal about what success actually means to you. If you are thinking about what truths am I here to live, what truths am I here to embody? What does success feel like for me? What does it look like for me? This path that you are being asked to become devoted to, ask yourself, what would success look like in my life for this? if I take away other people's values and ideas of what it should look like, what does it actually look like for me? Right? When I get really clear, success to me means being able to go on a 2-week silent meditation retreat, being able to afford that, being able to offer myself 2 weeks of silence. That may not be everybody's idea of success. What does it look like to define that for yourself? Just advice. Yeah, this is meditation. That's funny. I was just talking about this is meditation. This is rest. What would it feel like to just pause right now and just notice the rising and falling of your chest? The addiction to movement is real, right? The addiction to movement is real. And when you have this much mutable energy, it can really make us believe that moving forward towards the future is the answer, right? Sagittarius is very future oriented, and Gemini is in the now. So, how do we reconcile that? Maintain our future goals without losing touch with the fact that there's a beautiful bird outside of my window singing a beautiful song for me. And what if I missed that because I was so busy thinking about where I needed to be, where I need to go, what comes next? Take a pause. Don't let your addiction to movement or your anxiety be the thing that directs your path. Let it be your inner stillness and inner truth. How do you connect to that? I'd love to hear it down in the comments below. If you guys want to work with me, I have some wait lists on my website currently. I'm changing some things, but I'm letting myself have space to figure that out when I come back from my retreat, because who knows what's going to happen there. But I am changing some things around on my website. So if you're eyeing a workshop or something like that, they might not be available, or they may be changing in structure and price. Being on my Substack or being on my email list is also going to allow you to be connected in a deeper way with me. So I love having you guys on there if that feels aligned. Thanks so much for being here. Happy full moon in Sagittarius, and I'll see you next time.